You're about to hear the craziest Reddit stories about cheating and divorce. If you're not ready, I'm sorry.
I let my wife read my messages. She laughed until she saw the last one.
So, this all started on a Tuesday, which, let's be honest, is the worst day for life-altering decisions. My wife, Sarah, had been suspicious lately. Nothing new. She's suspicious of the toaster. But I figured I'd give her a little fun insight into my phone life. I mean, what could go wrong if I handed her my phone and let her scroll through my messages? It was supposed to be hilarious, like a sitcom moment. Oh, look, honey, I talked to my coworker about spreadsheets. Cue laughter. And at first, it was exactly that. She laughed at my terrible memes, my passive-aggressive texts to my mom, even the way I argued with a barista over the correct spelling of latte. I was basking in the glow of mutual amusement. Then she hit the group chat with my friends, and oh boy, that's when the comedy turned into a full-blown roast session. My buddy Mark had sent a picture of a raccoon stealing a pizza slice, and my response was, "This is basically me at work meetings." Sarah snorted, nearly choking on her coffee, tears forming. She swiped further, reading all my deep and meaningful late-night texts that were basically, "Do you think pigeons judge us?" She laughed, I laughed, the dog laughed, probably, though he was just licking my leg. I was smug, thinking, okay, victory. I survived the interrogation, and we were bonding through my embarrassing digital footprint. But then came the last message. I had almost forgotten about it myself because it was from a week ago and completely out of context. It was just a random string of letters, something like FJSL @#hashtag, which I'd sent to my coworker because my keyboard malfunctioned mid-rant about printer jams. Innocent, harmless, nonsense. At least that's what I thought. Sarah looked at it, paused, the laughter slowed, her eyes went wide, and I swear for a second the dog got nervous too. "What is this?" she asked, voice trembling, a mix of horror and disbelief. I froze.
That's just gibberish, I said, trying to smile, but Sarah's face had already shifted from amused to full-blown detective mode. She leaned closer, squinting at the screen as if it were a high-stakes code from a spy thriller. Gibberish? Really? You just randomly type gibberish at 2 a.m.? Her voice was suspicious, bordering on accusatory. I nodded, trying to look casual, like I wasn't about to have my life dismantled over a broken keyboard. Yep, pure nonsense. Nothing to see here. Mistake number 1, I underestimated her imagination. Mistake number 2, I underestimated my own past texting habits. Okay, but why does it say, meet at the warehouse, midnight, bring the stuff? Wait, what? My stomach sank. I grabbed my phone, but she snatched it away with the speed of a ninja and the glare of a vengeful queen. My heart was now doing cardio, which I hadn't paid for, and I tried to explain, stammering like a squirrel on espresso. I don't know, that was probably a typo. I mean, who even writes that? Definitely not me. She wasn't buying it. In fact, she started reading aloud every message leading up to that one. It sounded completely innocent if you ignored the phrase, bring the stuff, but Sarah's imagination? Suddenly, we were in an international heist movie starring me as the world's clumsiest villain. By now, I was sweating like a snowman in hell. Sarah started pacing, muttering things like, "Are you in some criminal organization? Is this why you're late every Thursday?" I laughed nervously because laughter is a survival mechanism, but my jokes only made her more suspicious. I was trapped in my own comedy setup, where the punchline was me possibly going to jail. She demanded to know who the coworker was in this context. I panicked, thinking, okay, I have to pick someone. I blurted out, "It's, Mark, my friend Mark." Mistake number 3, Mark is married, has kids, and lives nowhere near any warehouse. She immediately called Mark to confirm, and of course, he answered. The conversation went like a slapstick nightmare. Mark was confused, Sarah was furious, and I was in the background screaming internally. What warehouse? Why midnight? Mark was now laughing hysterically, thinking it was a prank, and me? I was holding my head like a cartoon character about to explode. Sarah hung up and turned to me, eyes blazing, and whispered, "You are seriously weird, but also terrifying." She paused. My relief was premature. Then she smiled. That's the part that made my blood run cold.
I have to see this warehouse. I'm going.
she said. My attempt to protest came out as a squeaky, "What?" because apparently my vocal cords were on strike. She grabbed her keys and I followed, barefoot and flailing, trying to prevent an impromptu midnight heist adventure I definitely did not sign up for. We drove in silence, tension thicker than peanut butter in a sandstorm. Every streetlight flicker felt like a cinematic cue. Every stray cat looked like an accomplice. My life was now a mix of horror and comedy, starring me as the clueless sidekick to my wife, who had officially become Sherlock Holmes with a caffeine addiction. When we reached the so-called warehouse, it turned out to be an abandoned storage unit behind a pizza place. Sarah glared at me. Explain. I tried to laugh it off. It's just a metaphor for my printer? She did not buy it. Then, in a twist worthy of a sitcom, the storage unit door creaked open. No one inside, just dust, old cardboard, and a very confused raccoon. Sarah stared at the raccoon, then at me. You sent me on a wild goose chase for a raccoon? I shrugged helplessly, trying to seem casual, but every bone in my body was screaming, "You will never live this down." Finally, we got home. Sarah couldn't stop laughing, not at the messages, not at the raccoon, but at the fact that I had somehow created an entire suspense thriller from gibberish and poor texting habits. She keeps bringing it up. She even reenacts my panicked expressions for her friends. And I live in fear that one day I'll accidentally text something else random and she'll go on another midnight adventure. Moral of the story, never let your wife read your messages unless you want your life turned into a comedy horror hybrid with a side of raccoon cameo. And yes, I double-check the keyboard now.
My husband filed for divorce over one sentence I said at breakfast.
I never thought breakfast could end a marriage. There I was, flipping a pancake like some domestic goddess on a Sunday morning, humming off-key to an old pop song, when my husband, Greg, looked at me like I'd just announced I was secretly a Russian spy. You know, I said, trying to sound casual, maybe we should sell the couch and invest in a goat. I swear to God, he froze mid-sip of his coffee, eyes wide, like I'd proposed we rent out our cat for ransom. I laughed. He did not. That's when I realized laughter wasn't universal, especially when it involved financial decisions and farm animals. Greg set down his mug so hard it left a ring in the wood that probably counts as evidence now. A goat, he said slowly, like I just suggested we move to Mars. Why would we? He stopped, paused, took a deep breath. I think I need a lawyer. I blinked. Then I blinked again. Was this a joke? Did the pancake batter suddenly turn into some kind of premonition? I reached for my phone to Google how to respond when your spouse announces divorce over breakfast. And then it hit me. Google had 0 results. Apparently, this is a niche situation. I tried to salvage it. Greg, come on, it was a joke. But the panic in his eyes told me the joke had officially detonated. By the time I got my scrambled eggs on the plate, he was already pacing like a man possessed. I can't believe this. One sentence and you've ruined everything. I wanted to ask what everything entailed, but my brain was busy recalculating every morning conversation I'd had for the past 6 years. Did I once say, "I like your haircut" sarcastically, I wondered? Was that the trigger for World War III? Greg, oblivious to my internal monologue, had pulled out his phone, swiping through contacts like a man preparing for a hostile takeover, only instead of companies, it was lawyers. By the time I finished my last bite, I realized my marriage was officially on Yelp's Do Not Recommend list. The next thing I knew, our living room looked like a courtroom exploded. Greg had printed spreadsheets, financial statements, and a sticky note labeled "The Goat Issue" in aggressive capital letters. He paced while I sat, trying to figure out whether to laugh or cry, when he suddenly slammed a finger on the table. You don't understand. One sentence can destroy a life. I had to admit the phrasing was dramatic enough to earn an Oscar. Honey, I said, attempting calm diplomacy, I've said way worse things during reality TV marathons.
Remember the great chips debate of 2019? Greg ignored me. His face was pale. He was imagining goat investments, probably. Then came the phone call. A lawyer actually picked up on the first ring. Greg's voice changed instantly. It was like I'd summoned a ghost. "Hello? Yes, I need to file for divorce immediately," he said. I thought about interrupting with, "It's just a goat joke, Greg," but decided against it, fearing it might accelerate the divorce proceedings. I watched dumbfounded as the lawyer started taking notes, probably expecting a detailed breakdown of marital betrayal, emotional trauma, and goat-related finances. I quietly poured myself a second coffee, realizing caffeine might be the only thing holding me together. By mid-afternoon, my kitchen had turned into a negotiation battlefield. Greg demanded I remove all goat-related comments from the house and apologize for reckless humor, while I countered with, "I'll only apologize if you admit that investing in a goat is ridiculous." Tensions escalated. At one point, he threatened to sell our shared video game console. I threatened to replace the pancake spatula with a sword. Somehow it felt eerily like a medieval standoff, minus the dragons but with extra whipped cream. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Greg pulled out a framed photo of us from our honeymoon and dramatically declared, "This is over."
Then the twist hit. Mid-argument, our cat, Mr. Whiskers, leapt onto the table, knocking over the spreadsheet labeled Asset Allocation versus Goat Viability. Papers flew everywhere. Greg slipped on a rogue sticky note and crashed into the sofa, groaning like a man who had just discovered his own mortality. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off my chair. That's when Greg froze, staring at me with a mix of horror and realization. "You're laughing?" he screamed. "Yes, I'm laughing," I said, wiping tears from my eyes, "because we're arguing over a goat and you just face-planted on the sofa." He blinked, slowly. Something clicked. Maybe it was the absurdity, maybe it was Mr. Whiskers sitting smugly on top of the chaos, but suddenly he started laughing too. Not angry laughter, real laughter. By the evening, we were both on the floor, surrounded by pancakes, spreadsheets, and sticky notes, trying to remember what had started the apocalypse. Greg admitted he overreacted. I admitted I probably should have phrased the joke differently. We decided mutually not to involve lawyers. We did, however, agree to never discuss livestock investment before breakfast again, and as we lay there exhausted and sticky with syrup, Greg whispered, "Next time, maybe just say, 'I want a goldfish.'" I nodded. That seemed safe. For now. But of course, life has a sense of humor. As I reached for the syrup bottle one last time, I noticed a small, suspicious envelope slipped under the door. My name was written in all caps, "Regarding the goat." My stomach sank. Greg's eyes widened. Our cat twitched knowingly. The saga wasn't over, and somehow I had a feeling this was going to get worse before it got funnier. I accidentally found out who I was cheated with and where it happened.
I never thought I'd become the protagonist of a how I found out my partner cheated story, but here I am, typing this with trembling hands, coffee cold, and my life in shambles. It all started on a Thursday. I don't know why it always happens on a Thursday. I was scrolling through Instagram like a normal person when I noticed a tag on a post from a bar I didn't recognize. The caption was ridiculous. "Best night ever with my partner in crime." Emoji. And there they were, my partner, smiling, hugging someone with a suspiciously familiar tattoo. My heart did that cartoonish double flip. The thing is, I knew that tattoo, so I did what any rational person would do. I became a detective. I started digging every post, every story, every TikTok comment. It was exhausting, like being trapped in some digital escape room with zero clues but maximum anxiety. Then I saw it, a check-in at a hotel downtown. Not just any hotel, mind you,
the kind with the neon pink flamingos on the roof. I laughed nervously at first. Flamingos, really? But then the humor drained out of me like someone had pulled a plug in my chest. They were there, together, and apparently having the best night ever. My brain refused to process it properly. So naturally, I called my friend and muttered something that sounded like a dolphin in distress. I needed proof, not just screenshots, those are for amateurs. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So, armed with a backpack filled with snacks, a notebook, because why not take notes, and my terrible decision-making skills, I went to the hotel. I parked a few blocks away, pretending to be a very unconvincing Uber Eats delivery guy. I watched the entrance, and within 10 minutes, they appeared, laughing like teenagers. I swear, if betrayal had a soundtrack, it would have been their laughter. But then something insane happened. A pigeon landed on my car, pooped directly on my hood, and somehow this absurdity made me laugh hysterically in the middle of my trauma. I swear, life has a cruel sense of humor.
So there I was, crouched behind a bush, covered in sweat and pigeon remnants, witnessing my relationship evaporate like cheap soda. But the universe wasn't done messing with me. They didn't just go to a random hotel. They booked a room with a balcony that faced the alley I was hiding in. I could see them clearly. My partner humming some obnoxious pop song while the other person, let's call them Mystery Tattoo, did something suspiciously romantic, like holding their hand and whispering secrets. And I kid you not, my partner tripped over the balcony chair while leaning over. I laughed so hard I almost forgot I was heartbroken. Almost. Then came the part that made me question reality. Mystery Tattoo pulled out a phone and started recording something. And I swear they looked directly at me. Or maybe it was the pigeon on my car. Either way, I bolted, slipping over a discarded smoothie cup, hitting my head on a trash can. Stars exploded in my vision like fireworks. The worst part? My notebook flew out of my backpack mid-fall, landing perfectly open on a diagram I'd drawn of the situation with arrows and notes, like some deranged war map. I lay there for a moment, realizing this was peak absurdity, but I couldn't stop. I had to know more. I went back the next night, even more prepared, this time with binoculars, night vision goggles I borrowed from a friend who may or may not be a survivalist, and snacks that did nothing to calm me down. I watched as my partner entered the hotel again, but this time things took a turn for the insane. Mystery Tattoo wasn't alone. They brought a tiny dog wearing sunglasses. I can't explain why, but seeing a chihuahua in sunglasses holding a tiny cocktail umbrella while my life fell apart was somehow funnier than it should have been. And then my partner, mid-laugh, slipped again on the balcony. I thought, okay, either this is some kind of cosmic joke or karma really enjoys slapstick. By the third night, I was unrecognizable even to myself. I had snacks, binoculars, and a sense of impending doom that could rival any horror movie. And then it happened. They left the hotel, got into a cab, and drove straight to a bowling alley. A bowling alley! At 11 p.m. My jaw dropped so hard, I think I actually bruised it. I had followed them like a deranged spy through the streets of downtown, taking mental notes like Sherlock on Adderall. The bowling alley sign flickered above them, strike or bust. And I swear I couldn't make this up if I tried. My life had become a tragic comic sitcom with no commercial breaks. So I did the only thing I could. I went inside. Pretending to be a competitive bowler in a tournament I didn't exist in, I approached cautiously. My partner, in the middle of a perfect strike, didn't see me at first. Mystery Tattoo was filming, probably for a future viral TikTok titled Cheating Chronicles, Strike Edition. And then it hit me. Not the betrayal, that I had accepted, but the absurdity. I sat down at the bar, ordered a soda, and started live commenting the entire situation in my head like a sports announcer. And here comes the treachery with a 7-pin split. I laughed so hard that people stared. I didn't care.
Then the unthinkable happened. My partner noticed me. And not in the subtle, oh hey, funny coincidence way. No, they froze mid-bowling swing, eyes wide, mouth opening like a goldfish. Mystery Tattoo turned around and, bless the universe, tripped over the tiny dog in sunglasses. The dog went flying into a stack of bowling pins, pins exploded everywhere, and the chaos was so perfect it could have been choreographed. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. And for a moment, I didn't feel betrayed. I just felt entertained. Finally, I walked up, heart pounding, pride demolished, dignity in tatters. So, this is your version of a night out? I asked, voice calm but spiked with sarcasm sharp enough to cut steel. They sputtered, the dog barked, the pins clattered. And then I left. Not because I wanted to, but because I realized some stories are too ridiculous to ruin with confrontation. I walked out into the night, pigeon on my hood somehow still intact, notebook wet with spilled soda, and I laughed until my ribs ached. I found out who I was cheated with and where, but in the end I realized life is absurd. Betrayal is chaotic, and sometimes the universe throws you chihuahuas in sunglasses to remind you to laugh. 12 years of marriage destroyed in one night, thanks to Reddit.
I never thought Reddit would ruin my life. I mean, I thought it was just harmless memes and cat videos, maybe the occasional life hack that makes me question why I've been peeling garlic like a caveman for 30 years. But apparently, Reddit is also a full-time relationship assassin. It all started on a Friday night when my wife, Karen, insisted we do our thing. Our thing usually involves me lying on the couch, Karen scrolling Instagram, and us occasionally making passive-aggressive jokes about each other's hairlines. But this time, Karen had discovered Reddit, specifically the r/am-I-the-asshole subreddit. She claimed she had a totally innocent question about our marriage, and since I was half asleep and 5 glasses of wine deep, I agreed. Mistake number 1. She typed something like, "Am I the asshole for hiding my husband's favorite snacks because he's been eating them too fast?" I chuckled because, honestly, yes, I do eat the snacks like they're endangered species. But then the post started flying in. Strangers arguing in all caps about my snacking habits. One commenter said, "You should be ashamed. That's a marital crime." I laughed it off until I realized Karen wasn't laughing. Oh no. She was reading every single comment, nodding like she just discovered a prophecy that perfectly described my flaws. And that's when she dropped the bomb. Reddit says you're a selfish monster. My stomach did a backflip. I tried to joke, they're just jealous of my snack game, but Karen didn't budge. By 11 p.m., Reddit had become an oracle. Every question, every hypothetical scenario about relationships somehow involved me being a selfish, controlling, snack-hoarding tyrant. I tried to counter with stories of my heroic deeds, like that time I rescued a squirrel from a storm drain, or that I let her pick the movie last Friday instead of me, but Reddit's wisdom was absolute. Every post, every upvote felt like a microscopic dagger to my dignity. And then came the final blow. A PM from a random stranger that just said, "Your wife deserves better than you." I laughed nervously. I shouldn't have. Karen read it over my shoulder.
Now, here's where the night goes fully off the rails. Karen, fueled by the righteous fury of thousands of Redditors, suddenly decided she needed closure. And by closure, she meant dragging me to the living room floor where she had printed out the top 10 comments about my failings and taped them like some twisted trophy wall. I couldn't move. I was pinned by memes and angry advice. Then she did the unthinkable. She took a magnifying glass. Yes, an actual magnifying glass, and started reading the posts aloud, slowly, dramatically, like she was narrating a Shakespearean tragedy. I swear every sentence was designed to make me cry. I tried to escape. Karen, maybe we should just sleep this off? But no, Reddit had turned her into a high-functioning vengeance machine. Then came the kicker.
She revealed that she'd made an account and started posting my offenses on Reddit herself, asking strangers if she was justified in her wrath. The responses came in within minutes. Absolutely. Dump the man. He's a menace. Reddit says you're single now. I'm not exaggerating. By midnight, our marriage was literally trending on a subreddit. I didn't even know I could be trending for anything other than my dance moves at my cousin's wedding. Then, like something out of a low-budget action movie, the power went out. Pitch black. The house silent, except for Karen whispering, "Reddit says hiding is cowardly." I panicked. I stubbed my toe on the coffee table. I screamed like a banshee, and then came the sound I'll never forget. My phone buzzing, notifications, hundreds of new Reddit messages. Apparently, the saga had gone viral. Strangers were giving me life advice. One told me to buy flowers, another suggested moving to Canada, and another, oh God, suggested I take up professional apologizing as a career. Karen laughed. Not the normal laugh, the evil, triumphant laugh of someone who knows they've won.
At 2 a.m., I realized something terrifying. Reddit had literally turned into a third party in my marriage. It had taken my years of marital bargaining, compromise, and occasional Netflix sacrifices and shredded it into a thread of absolute humiliation. I tried to make peace. I offered snacks. I offered to let her pick our vacation next year, which is basically a lifetime concession in our house. But she just shook her head, scrolling through Reddit again. She even showed me a comment that said, "Dump him immediately. Don't think, just dump him." I tried to reason. "Karen, it's literally strangers on the internet." She whispered, "Exactly." Then came the plot twist that no one saw coming. I found an old, unopened bag of chocolate chip cookies in the pantry, my secret stash. I held them up like a peace offering. Karen gasped. I swear, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a spork. And for a brief, shining moment, it seemed like the universe might bend in my favor. She looked at the cookies, looked at me, then laughed. A real laugh. Not evil, not triumphant, just human. And she said, "Fine, maybe Reddit is wrong." I almost cried. But then she added, "But only because these cookies are life-saving." By 3 a.m., we were laughing hysterically on the kitchen floor, covered in cookie crumbs, rereading the Reddit threads and realizing how utterly absurd everything was. I even made a meme about us. 12 years of marriage ruined by strangers online, saved by cookies. Karen loved it. We went to bed exhausted, slightly traumatized, but somehow stronger. And Reddit? Well, Reddit will always be there, lurking, waiting to destroy innocent lives with keyboard judgment. And me? I'll never trust my snack habits or strangers on the internet again. But at least now I know, never underestimate the power of cookies.